in this tournament, right? That kind of middle of the pack. You kind of even have to include Flash Wolves in that number because the reality is Liberland on the other side of that haven't picked up any series wins just yet. Machi have actually had some wins, they've had some decent performances, and they have been competitive the whole way through. The only thing is, every other team has just been that little bit better than them. That's why they're currently sitting in 7th place.
Yeah, and this is now, we've already sort of mentioned this, but Ardeont kind of just having the ability to not have a comfortable match here because they are ahead, but you don't want to start losing to a team like Machi. And for Machi as well, it's going to be an interesting run for them. They can have a good showing, which will speak well to their ability to perform for the rest of the regular season, which again is kind of important because they want to make sure they're still above Liberland Supreme, if nothing else.
Exactly. You definitely want to finish above Liberland Supreme, you're right. And the thing is, in terms of scoreline, they're still close enough to Mega that actually surpassing them in some way and avoiding relegations is still a real possibility for this team. So like we said, that has to be the goal. And the reality is, and this is kind of what they were speaking to before the match as well, is any kind of improvement, any kind of takeaway they can get from this match, any kind of learning they can do here will help them avoid that bottom 2 if they're able to apply it in time and pick up some crucial wins elsewhere.
All right, let's go ahead and meet the teams now. Let's start things off with Team Ardeont, the first place team so far in OPC. This is 3 members of the ex-Mighty AOD roster from Apex Season 3, now coming into OPC as the sole Korean team. And right now, doing pretty well. They have a 7th member that's not being shown here, which is Smurf. He's on the sub bench at the moment. He's also a tank player that sort of swaps in and out with Republic.
And of course, coming up against them is going to be Machi Esports, who finished up with a 5th place win, the 5th place finish, I should say, in Season 1, just barely getting beaten out by Hong Kong Attitude, and prior to that had kind of been the gatekeepers of the playoffs. Among the 3 Taiwanese teams, they have generally been the lowest of the 3, but have taken wins off the other 2 in the past. That being said, this season, they seem to have struggled a little to keep pace with the overall general improvement of all these teams, even though they have improved themselves, much the same as Ardeont. They also have a 7th player currently on the bench in the form of Rai.
And it was also a DPS player as well. So Machi come into OPC Season 2 as one of the few teams to keep a complete identical roster to Season 1. The other team that did that was Flash Wolves. Every other team has had some sort of change-up or they are a brand new entrant into OPC Season 2. So that's been rather interesting. I think we should also really talk about the matches that we've got to look forward to today. So we are starting things off with Ardeont and Machi Esports. Following that, we're going to have Hong Kong Attitude and Flash Wolves as out. And to finish off the evening is Blank Esports and Mega Thunder. So the middle match is going to be really interesting, and the last match as well is going to be interesting in terms of where is Blank going to go? Are they going to move forward or not?
Yeah, exactly. And to kind of touch on that middle match as well, while we've got a moment, we've said it a couple of times now, Flash Wolves are still on Hong Kong Attitude's hit list. They're the one team from Season 1 that Hong Kong Attitude still haven't beaten. In spite of that, they've been able to make it up till 3rd place so far, but actually a win against Flash Wolves really puts them in contention for 2nd. And you kind of touched on what we're looking in that 3rd matchup as well. But for now, of course, we do have Ardeont first up taking on Machi Esports. And I do believe it is Ardeont with the home side as well.
Yeah, which makes things just that much more difficult for Machi in this particular matchup. Ardeont so far have a really interesting kind of play style because throughout the season, they've played Doofus compositions, they have had Genji compositions. Now we're seeing Erster on the Soldier as well. That's something they weren't playing a lot at the start of the season, something that they're now developing more into as the season progresses, as we're about to head to the end of the regular season play.
The reality with this team as well is they came in through the promotion relegation tournament. Interestingly enough, speaking of roster changes, have actually changed their roster since that promotion relegation in which they qualified, picking up 2 much newer players, kind of unknown talents, as it were, that they've gone on to develop. They came in by storm, sat at the top of the table very, very quickly, absolutely deserved to be there, and they've set the precedent, right? Much like Blank at the beginning of Season 1, they've set the standard for what teams need to be meeting. Unlike Blank, they have yet to be bested, and we've yet to see a situation where another team overtakes them and starts setting the standard, like what Flash Wolves did in Season 1. But teams are consistently getting closer and closer to Ardeont. They've pushed the overall level of competition up. And part of that pushing of competition has been what's affected Machi here and what's left them struggling to keep up with these other teams.
Machi, they've been really struggling to get wins in the second round robin here. They picked up their first two. They got one against Libyan Supreme, which they haven't yet faced in round robin number 2. So that could be a potential another win for this team. It's going to have to be an important one for this team as well, because otherwise, we did also say on the other side of that table, Libyan Supreme need that win against Machi as well. So for Machi, it's about picking up whatever they can get as we head to the end of the season.
They're in a bit of an interesting situation. If I'm not mistaken, they actually have 11 total map wins. So if you think they've only got 2 match wins, that accounts for just over half of those map wins, which means even in the series that they've lost, they've generally taken a map win, sometimes 2, off their opponents. So that has been the promising thing for this team the whole way through so far. Even when they've lost, they've looked pretty competitive, and that still rings true now. That being said, this second round robin has kind of been the round robin of 3-0s so far. We're seeing a lot less situations, especially among the teams like Flash Wolves and AHQ, where matches are going to that 3-1 scoreline. We are seeing the teams ahead in the standings starting to shut out the teams that are below them in the standings. And that means if Machi can keep picking up those map wins, if they are the team that keeps creating those 3-1 losses for themselves, this is, of course, ideally you want wins, but if in the losses they're still getting 1 or 2 map wins, then those signs of promise are still there, and you can argue that they're keeping pace, just maybe not executing. That all being said, again, you've got to come back to the fact that they need match wins if they're going to avoid relegation.
And Machi was interesting in last night's matches because they went up against AHQ, and despite the fact that AHQ were rather dominant, that was another 3-0 sweep in AHQ's favor, but for Machi Esports, had some rather good moments individually. Had to talk about D-Crown as one of the guys. No talk as well. Really good tank interplay between those two members to really hold the fort even in dire situations. Situations such as Nuns going down quite early to Dizzy, trying to buy as much time for Nuns to get back in the fight as possible. Some individual good plays here and there by Kant, and we've seen that in the past. But now they are starting to fall short just a little bit. Going up against Ardeont, they had a little bit of an interesting run at the start of Ilios yesterday against Mega, where they dropped Ruins, but otherwise looked pretty clean. They get the first map pick as well. It is Lijiang Tower.
And that's the thing. Of course, Ilios, there was that drop on Ruins, but of course that was also Mega's map pick last night. So Ardeont just get to go to what they are most comfortable on here, and that is Lijiang Tower. To kind of touch on another factor I think that's at play right now in the Machi roster is Nuns and Kant are both really solid DPS players. They both really shine in particular moments. But the unfortunate reality is more so on the side of Kant right now. He's kind of in that second tier of Tracers. And it's really unfortunate to say that because he's actually such a good player. But the reality is, every other Tracer in this tournament is really, really good too. You've got DM, who you see on your screens now. You've got Eat You Up on Blank. You've got Bacon Jack on Flash Wolves. Now you've got AHQ picking up players like Rapid, right? You've even got NZNR looking really solid on Mega. And if you're just that much behind those guys, even if it's only by that margin, if those guys are able to consistently beat you out, then that is just a head-to-head matchup where you are inherently weaker. And that, among a couple of other things, has continually plagued Machi here. They struggle with it a little bit throughout Season 1, but that upper echelon of Tracers was only occupied by about 2 or 3 Tracers in the whole tournament. This time around, pretty much every Tracer is on that level, and it's starting to feel like that statement finishes with the exception of Kant.
And that's the real shame, because Kant actually is most likely the most improved player of this team. Kind of have to give D-Crown that honor as well, but otherwise, you really look at some of the early performances from Machi, specifically in the matches they actually did win, which was against Mega, which was against Libyan Supreme, and in those matches, and in matches they were losing, Kant was never really the issue. He may not be on the level of Bacon Jack yet, he may not even be on the level of Rapid, who's really come into his own, and even really challenging Bacon Jack in a lot of those one-on-one head-to-heads, but for a player like Kant, even if Machi are losing, he never really appears like he is the real issue of the team that's causing them to lose. He still feels like the shining star in a bad situation.
And that's the reality, right? He isn't quite on the level of those Tracers, but the consistency is still there from this guy that you'd be nuts to drop him or even consider anything like that. And at no point here, by the way, am I suggesting that that's how Machi can fix the problems they have, because it's not even that they have problems necessarily. It's just that they aren't quite hitting those same levels of performance as a lot of these other teams. And that's the thing, right? Yeah, Kant is extremely consistent still on that Tracer, maybe not quite hitting the level of some of those other players. Nuns is looking really, really solid in that DPS role sometimes. And then sometimes the consistency isn't quite there as much as it is for players like Erster, who he's going to be coming up against. And you just sort of get that across the board with this, every member of this team. Look, for all the great things they are constantly able to do, for all the consistency they do have, they just don't seem to be able to push to that next level of play consistently enough.
And the next level will be to raise the individual skill of all the members, raise the macro play, kind of improve everything all around, and then enable the players like Kent, like Nuns, who can really go off in the right conditions. So we're talking about a situation now where we need to set those conditions and we need to create those situations quite clearly. Going into this matchup against Ardeont, you really have to look at where we're mega quite successful last night against them, and those were usually in the opening fights, usually in situations where both teams come out quite even. You're not going into Ardeont in a deficit. You want to create those early leads. How do you win Ruins against them? You get a 95 to 0% lead, and then you really power it home.
Do just have a little bit of a delay getting into game here, so stick with us for a moment. Should only be a short one. And you actually bring up something interesting, because in terms of what we were just saying about Machi and bringing up the general standard across the board, actually, if you want to see an example where that has happened, you need to look no further than Mega. They've brought on some new players, but for the most part, the roster is largely the Fireball squad from last season with Apudo and NZNR and Titawat, with these additions here and there to just kind of bump up the level of the coaching and the macro play and the analysis, etc., etc. And it's worked out well for this team, and that reflects in the fact that they are now ahead of Machi. So it doesn't mean, again, it doesn't mean that Machi need to be changing things up, that they need to be dropping players or anything like that, because this roster is solid. They look good together. The coordination is all there, and the individual players consistent enough. They just need to push it that next level up across the board.
And another example, an easy example, would actually be Hong Kong Attitude, and I was going to say there's an even better example, and that's an AHQ Esports club, because Hong Kong Attitude is a straightforward example. We already knew they were on the up from the later end of Season 1 OPC, but actually AHQ were on their way down from Season 1 of OPC. Now that we come into the second season, they didn't look great in the first round robin, but suddenly now in the second round robin, they got a second win, and oh boy, was it a big second win. AHQ legitimately look like one of the most dominant teams now, better than Flash Wolves even, and that's a hard thing to say, and that will be proved potentially in the next matchup when Hong Kong Attitude take on Flash Wolves. We'll have to look forward to that one to see exactly how Flash Wolves do, but AHQ, especially matching up against Machi Esports last night, that difference was evidently clear.
Yeah, it was absolute standout, and like you said, look, it was a 3-0. And even though things looked close at certain times, the reality is AHQ were just in command of that. And it's funny because what you've managed to do there, Kevin, is you've managed to describe exactly what has landed Machi in this situation. The reality is, all across the board, these teams have all improved. The standard of play has improved. There may be one exception to that, might be Flash Wolves, because actually Season 1 at the end, they were so far ahead of the rest of the competition. It's just that Ardeont are now in a level ahead of them again, and everyone else has started to catch up the Flash Wolves. So the thing is, Machi just kind of haven't. To be fair as well, the other team that's in a bit of a similar situation right now is Blank Esports. They also have a bit of new roster. They've had some changes up going on there, getting the coordination back down. And that reflects in their standings as well, right? Currently in 5th place there, still with the ability to make it into 4th to make playoffs, but compared to the 2nd place finish from Season 1, it is quite a stark difference. They have started to get very displaced by a lot of these teams. And if it's these two teams specifically that aren't quite keeping pace, well, hey, it's no surprise that Machi, who were 5th compared to Blank, who were only 2nd, are now currently in that bottom 2, while Blank are still safe in the middle of the pack at least.
And it's interesting you mentioned Blank, because in many regards, AHQ Esports Club in the second round robin feel like what Blank could be when they reach their potential, right? Because for a long time, in that first round robin, that was 3 weeks worth of gameplay, AHQ trying to mold with their new lineup, trying to fit Rapid into this team. It was really shaky. It didn't look really clean, didn't look clear how they were going to go. And Blank feel like they're in that spot right now. But this is a bad time to be in that spot, because we are heading towards the end of regular season play. So for a team like Blank, how much runway do they have left? Because you feel like they could be where AHQ is now if they really get there to the end. And you got to bring it back to teams like Machi as well. You know, this is another team that is unfortunately still just not able to find their feet in a similar pool to Blank.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? The reality is AHQ, among those three that we're talking about there, are the ones that have done it first, right? They're the ones that sort of come together and push to that next level of play. First among these teams that were still kind of struggling, still finding their feet a little bit. And I think it's fair actually to include Liberland in that pack as well, realistically, in terms of teams that were still kind of finding their feet, especially with their mid-season substitution on the side of Liberland. But yeah, that's the thing. And of course, if we're talking about making playoffs, AHQ have beaten you to the punch in terms of gelling together and starting to reach their potential as a six-man roster. That's also the exact team you have to beat to get into playoffs because AHQ are currently in 4th. So that just kind of increases that pressure to a factor. More so for Blank than it does for Machi and Liberland, but in terms of the kind of meta standard of play, if you want to sit here at the end of the season, regardless of your standing, and go, in terms of the quality of play, we are a playoffs level team, AHQ and Hong Kong Attitude are kind of your gold standard for what you would needed to have reached by about this point of the tournament.
And Hong Kong Attitude have already unfortunately failed to make a mark against Ardeont. We still do have coming up in the next week of gameplay, Ardeont taking on Blank, Flash Wolves, and AHQ, and those are all going to be very important games. You're at the sort of stage now where for Blank, it's very unlikely you'll see them make a strong mark against Ardeont, but for Flash Wolves, we've already taken a map off them. It is very likely they may be able to continue that streak, and for a team like AHQ, who most recently bested the Flash Wolves, I'm very excited to see exactly how AHQ are going to grab Ardeont.
I want to touch on something a little bit more specific to this matchup we're about to see here between Machi and Ardeont. There's something that I've started to bring up more and more, just especially on Control, is the two DPSs, the two DPS players, my goodness, I nearly did it again, plus the Winston player. So on the side of Ardeont here, it is DM, Erster, and Republic who make up that trio, and then on the side of Machi, it's Kant, Nuns, and D-Crown. And we talk about this kind of cleanliness between those three, given that they are, generally speaking, the most instrumental to the dive, especially when you're talking about that Tracer-Winston dichotomy. And that's the thing, is actually Machi are really clean on that front. They've got really solid interplay. They're able to run Nuns on the Genji with Kant on the Tracer to get that 3-man, really high pressure, which will match what Ardeont does. They very much favor that Tracer Genji as well. And then you've got the flexibility to run Nuns on that Soldier. So if we're wanting to talk about where Machi are actually struggling in the more specific sense, it's not quite fair to break it down on a player-by-player basis, but certainly, actually, the coordination and interplay between those three players specifically is actually really even compared to a lot of the other teams in this tournament. Again, if we're talking about pushing it up to the next level of play, what it really comes down to is meshing the coordination of those three players with the coordination of the team as a whole, especially with No Talk on the Diva, who does have to be balancing, you know, saving the dive, keeping the support safe, and exerting his own pressure on the game as well. And that's a really tough ask against these uber aggressive teams like Ardeont.
And you mentioned the fact that keeping the support safe is integral here, and that's going to be important, especially against a team like Ardeont, because it was noticed, something that I've seen from the Machi side is Kiyomi and Ristia, unfortunately, and this is maybe, you know, I guess it is a team thing because tanks play a huge part in this protection sense, but also the supports themselves. The ability to keep both Ristia and Kiyomi alive has been somewhat lacking against most of these teams here. And we go up against a team like Ardeont, Animo is very difficult to kill. Jeff has been phenomenal as well. And on top of that, you have players like Republic and Michelle, by the way, who have done a great job of keeping them alive. And then on the flip side, Ursa and DM, who have been so good at taking down the supports on every other team.
And to kind of touch on that gold standard for a diva, you've got to look at Michelle, who is often instrumental in keeping DM and Ursa alive when otherwise they would have died in those dive situations, allowing them to convert necessary kills and not get traded out 1-for-1, and is also still able to keep those supports safe as well. An absolute masterclass in diva play, and we'll likely see that again here as now both teams out the gate, finally loaded onto Lijiang Tower. See how the opening skirmish pans out.
And it's going to be Ursa on the Soldier as well, so this is the evolution of the Ardeont side, and already a very quick kill onto both supports. Already mentioned this before, but the ability to keep Kiyomi and Ristia alive is important.
And from that, the pressure onto the tanks is just not going to be recovered from. There's no supports to top them up. Nuns and Kant do get out alive. That's better than nothing, but 4 members of Machi going down and pointing control of Ardeont.
That was a strong tank from Ardeont as well. Damn, we already know how deadly this player is. Ursa now playing a much slower role. We've seen from Ardeont, they usually favor an aggressive playstyle. This time around, they have to slow things down. Kiyomi killing Jeff early though, this is a turnaround for Machi.
It really is, but DM knows how to answer it. He and Ursa go aggressive onto Kiyomi and get the wraparound now onto the remaining members as D-Crown gets dropped. And unfortunately, in their movement to kind of capitalize on Jeff's absence from the fight, Machi left themselves a little bit too exposed.
Now you get into the situation where Machi are potentially spawn camped by Ardeont as well, especially when you consider that Ardeont are very close to ultimates. Now because Jeff actually went down that last fight, didn't get a chance to charge his ultimates, that's a little bit of a saving grace for Machi when you look at the macro play here, because otherwise Animo's close to Sound Barrier, Republic's close to Primal Rage, and that means spawn camp time.
Nice place on the Pulse Bomb, actually. It does go wide in terms of kills, but it just stalls up Machi that extra bit. Suddenly, D-Crown had to be really careful where he moved to. That slows them down, and now the read on the position is there for Ardeont. So Machi, their position is exposed as they come into this. I didn't know exactly what move they're making, but that's a good stick. There we go, talking about Kant's Pulse Bombs. They need to close up on those, though, and that means the Sound Barrier has to be committed to keep them in this fight. Nuns gets pressured out, though, and doesn't get the Sound Barrier on him. And now Erster putting down the damage with the Tactical Visor, getting a little bit blocked up, and a good time transcendence out of Kiyomi. Jeff does not have his yet, and Nuns starting to open up on these backliners. Can't quite get onto the Lucio and is a little low. Ooh, able to get Anima off the back end of it. And that means Machi are actually going to be able to get themselves a cap in here.
The real micro-level play here from Machi is due to the fact that Jeff has been shut down multiple times. By the way, he did again. He still hasn't reached the Transcendence. Meanwhile, Kiyomi has. Now, what kind of difference would that have made if Ardeont didn't lose Jeff the amount of times they did? They would have had that Transcendence earlier. They would have had an extra ability to actually save themselves, allow Ursa to get the damage down, allow Republic to get the damage down as well. But now, Ardeont, opportunity to strike back.
And unfortunately for Machi, that Pulse Bomb was one of the only ultimates they had to work with. So yeah, the strike back comes in and it comes in hard. They don't even need to commit the ultimates because really the threat of them is so significant. Machi know they can't straight up go toe-to-toe. They leave themselves in a bad spot and Ardeont capitalize.
Speaking of bad spot, Machi are very down on ultimates now as we're approaching the tail end of this first Lijiang map on night markets. Already on 86% progress for Ardeont and still a lot of ultimates in the bag as well for Ursa. We already saw a Tactical Visor only a fight in a bit ago. He's nearly onto his next one.
And DM, oh, huge stick onto Kiyomi. Gets Restia in it as
That's the
well.
supports.
That is a massive open, and this is already an uphill battle for Machi. DM going 4K on the scoreboard there. Going to be able to close out the last couple now, and that is going to be the 99-33. Not too shabby for Machi, but definitely Ardeont in the driver's seat.
And as mentioned in the pre-game talk here, look, one of the reasons, or rather one of the weaknesses of this Machi side is in keeping those supports alive. Now, Machi, they had a couple of good wins in there, and they did that off the back of suppressing Jeff. They made sure the Transcendence wasn't going to come out in the correct rotation that Ardeont were looking for. Now, they achieved that, but unfortunately, DM on the backside was still a major issue. The only sort of resting case that you can have here, the only thing you can really think about that really saved Machi a little bit extra is you didn't also have Ursa playing a Genji, therefore it was only DM taking down the supports. Keeping that in mind, one player controlling two supports has to be a problem that needs to be solved by Machi now.
And the truth that has to be said is, like, part of that is as well Republic's influence in those dives. That's why we talk about that Tracer-Winston duo there. But you're absolutely right. DM able to exert that pressure while, frankly, Kant isn't matching it. He's still holding his own. He's still putting in good groundwork and generally not dying, but needs to get more conversion.
Jeff.
That's a great open onto Jeff. The target prioritization for Machi is solid. They close out on Animo as well, but they're losing their own members anyway, as honestly these DPSs out of Ardeont just put on so much pressure, and now with Nuns going down, that's going to be Machi just unfortunately not getting the better of that opening fight despite getting those two supports out the gate.
That's a very important opening as well. Once again, putting the pressure onto Jeff. This is something that's been consistent and a little bit of a trend for Machi now across two stages of Lijiang Town. Now, you sped it yourself. It wasn't enough for Machi to really get the lead in Ardeont. Despite how far they look like they're behind, they're able to get the counter trades, and that's what makes the team so important.
I think that might have just been a buddy shot fireball from the Zenyatta, unfortunately, for Kant there. So just slows
That's 6
down
damage to the face.
Yeah, it slows down Machi just a little bit.
Machi need to be able to speed up as well because you need a lot of fights. One thing that Mega did quite well against Ardeont was force a lot of engagements. They weren't scared to go in, and Machi need to have the same confidence now.
That's a great catch, actually, to isolate No Talk as they went for the movement, but can keeping the team in it as they kind of lose focus of the fight here. Ardeont getting a bit too aggressive on the tanks, and now the sound barrier to keep the remaining members safe, and that means No Talk should be able to get the mech back while Kant and Nuns are keeping the pressure on. Nearly getting the point cap, but Republic goes in for a contest. Could just lose his life here, though. And honestly, Machi is still very much in control of this. Republic now down, and they're kind of trickling one. Transcendence is out from Jeff, but the team is isolated. Kiyomi getting 2 headshots. You don't see that every day, folks. But that is the fight controlled well enough from Machi, and it will result in a cap here as they can close out these last couple of kills. Is it a good stall out from Ardeont? They buy themselves about 20 more percentage points, and they do make it a bit more expensive for Machi.
And this is the really good thing about Machi's take there was actually they had control of the fight before they even really had to commit ultimates. Nuns was sitting on top of a Dragon Blade when he finally pulled it out. 3 of the members of Ardeont actually went down. You kind of question the Dragon Blade, but then you kind of consider the situation where it takes a lot of effort even to kill the remaining members, so it ends up working out for them fine.
That is a bit of a forced transcendence out of Kiyomi, given that his frontliners were getting low, but they convert very well off it. They've got the pressure on Ardeont. Just need to not get too split up, but unfortunately with Kiyomi down, that's exactly what does happen. That's a good self-destructive pick DM and creates the space for them to regroup as they catch Erster. Gonna be able to pull back to the point now, regroup, and make this an expensive one for Ardeont to get onto.
That was actually a decent transcendence play, all things considered. When you really look at the area controlled it allowed Machi to get forward presence. We talk about Machi needing to get aggressive against Ardeont. Talk about Machi needing to take initiative against Ardeont. They did do that, and they reaped the successes on it.
And speaking of, that is instant aggression out of Nuns to find Jeff looking for more. And in truth, really needs more. But Ardeont don't actually have defensive ultimates to stay in this fight anyway, so just off the Dragon Blade and Sound Barrier, they're able to get enough conversion, and No Talk getting Michelle for good measure. This is now actually Machi looking very in control.
And this is a Machi that has overtaken Ardeont's progress as well. That's not an easy thing to do. Machi have won 3 team fights in a row now. That's against a team like Ardeont. We haven't really seen that before. Maybe Mega on Ilios on Ruins, but we're not on Ilios anymore. We're far away from that. We're all the way in China, and so far, Machi, they're still making it work for them.
And a great pulse bomb onto Jeff. This is exactly the opening blows they need. They're already getting the picks out just in these straight up fights without the ultimates, which is giving them time to get more ultimates up. They're really keeping Ardeont at bay on this bridge. They do get the 1 response by getting No Talk's mech here, but there's enough time for him to get it back.
So this is going to be the important fight for Ardeont, and they should be able to turn it around. When you consider what tools Ardeont actually have here, a Transcendence needing on Tactical Visor, Machi have finally bled their own ultimates dry.
That's going to be the self-destructive force Machi off the point. That's a good catch on No Talk as well, who wasn't able to get back in the mech, and now the Tactical Visor exerting the pressure down means they're going to be able to pick off Restia. Kiyomi, super late Transcendence. Way too late.
I think there must have been a little bit of a miscommunication there from the team because 3 of the members decided to suicide, going for the quick respawn there. Kiyomi wasn't sure whether the team wanted to stay or not. He committed a Transcendence. That might just come back to bite Machi because they only have potentially 1 more fight opportunity, and that Transcendence would have been incredibly important, but they will be able to rely on Restia's Sound Barrier if they can charge it in time. Otherwise, Nuns has to go big.
Yeah, having the Transcendence would have given them a flat ult advantage for the supports. They can at least match you, right? Oh, but Nuns going down along with Restia not getting that Sound Barrier off means this is an uphill battle now. No Talk has to self-destruct to try and make space, but it's only space and Kant getting pressured out, and they actually had the ultimate advantage going into that. They can keep this point alive for a little while, but they don't really have the ideal ultimates for it, and Ardeont are just too in control now. Restia is finally able to use the Sound Barrier, but Nuns can't use the Dragon Blade because he got shut down with it out earlier, and that means that the ability to turn it back around for Machi is unfortunately not there. That means Ardeont will also get the 2-0. That is a real heartbreaker for Machi because they put themselves in a winning situation and then lost that winning situation by their own hand.
You had to have perfect play to really get a win against Ardeont. This is the final boss. This is always the realest test that you have to come up against, and DM was such a huge factor. This is probably that 3 to 4 kill streak that we saw on tonight markets, and purely the reason, or one of the big reasons, why Machi went down. Again, picking up the supports on Machi's side so easily, so cleanly.
And I say live and die by their own hand, right? Because, I mean, there was Kiyomi throwing that Transcendence out when unfortunately it wasn't necessary. That would have been a big lead. They still had a lead coming into that fight. They didn't commit the sound barrier in time, unfortunately. They committed some other ultimates a bit too early, didn't catch nuns with the sound barrier that would have, that did eventually come out. And just everything misfired for Machi the one time it really counted. And that is off the back of it firing perfectly for about 3 fights in a row while they were defending that cap and also getting it in the initial sense. But ultimately that results in an Ardeont win because that was also one map only and the other one was much more Ardeont sided. So one up in the series on the home side pick. Nothing too unexpected so far, but the glimmers of hope are there for Machi right
And what
now.
you really got to compliment here is Machi's ability to win from behind, because when Mega Thunder did quite well against Ardeont yesterday, they won while ahead. They got an early lead. They snowballed that early lead and they eventually capped it fully out and closed the game. Ardeont still really fought tooth and nail though. This time around, Ardeont were ahead. Usually when Ardeont's ahead, they use that and they win the game. So for a team like Machi, especially for a team like Machi to come back from behind, it is not an easy thing to do. For any team, it is not an easy thing to do. So that's why, for this team right now, so impressive.
That's the thing, it was just straight up good play. There's no other way you can describe it, right? The target prioritization was great. The ult cycling was really good. They actually had a good fight as well. The one where they got the point, they actually drew more ultimates out of Ardeont than Ardeont drew out of them. So Ardeont traded ultimate advantage for about 20 extra percentage on the point itself. Maybe that is what ultimately saved them at the end as well, because there was that fight at the very end where Ardeont were threatening overtime. So maybe worth, but Machi actually took that and ran with it. Let's take a look now though at Night Markets, which was much more Ardeont favored.
Well, speaking of taking and running with it, DM, very quick kill onto both the supports. Seacrown responded onto Jeff. Now note, this is actually quite important that Jeff died very quickly in this fight. He's very far behind in terms of ultimate charge. I guess so is Kiyomi, but Jeff dies again very quickly on the next engage. And then eventually that snowballs into a deficit where Jeff dies on 95% Transcendence. And is one of the reasons why Machi managed to get a decent amount of progress. It was only about 30-something%, but that is a lot more than a lot of teams actually do get against Ardeont. But the big problem still stands. DM's ability as a solo player, one guy to pressure up both Kiyomi and Restia, is something that has to be addressed.
Absolutely massive. And that's an interesting thing that you kind of touched on there with Jeff, because actually the times where Machi has been winning these fights so far against Ardeont has been when they've had an advantage specifically in the defensive ultimates, and generally it's been Kiyomi having a Transcendence where Jeff doesn't, which is interesting because normally Ardeont's able to match those defensive ultimates, so the target prioritization has paid off. Now taking a look at Gardens, again this was a very Ardeont dominated fight. This is quite a good catch at the start to isolate No Talk as they were going for this setup here. But they didn't quite get enough kills off the back of it, so they do pick Jeff and Animo again. The target prioritization is good, but at this point, the members of Machi are quite spread out because No Talk was busy off to the side, D-Crown dove quite deep, and they did also get the supports traded. Eventually, Ardeont were actually still quite stable and quite clustered, while Machi were very spread thin by the time it got down to a 4 versus 4.
And the reason they were spread thin is because they were quite hungry for the kills inside that middle house. You could see them diving on for Animo. It took them a long time to actually secure the kill onto Animo. Meanwhile, while that was happening, the remaining players outside of the house in the open courtyard area were taking down the Machi members that were staggered on the outside that were not protected within the house itself. So Machi on one hand, great picks to actually get the kills they did get, but very bloodthirsty and place their team spreading very thin.
Just want to say, I just noticed just now on Gardens, with like that tower in the middle, there's no way to get to the second floor. The lights are on. Who lives there? How do they get in and out?
Well, it's like Ilios, no one lives there.
Yeah, because but the lights are on. Someone's clearly living there. But how? You just never leave?
That's the magic of
And why are you living in a tower in the middle of a garden? There are a lot of questions. Something
I don't have a good answer.
Tinfoil hat on, something
I
spooky.
can tell you a lot about Overwatch, but not that.
But not that.
Not
there
that.
You go. Something spooky is happening in Lijiang Tower, I can tell you that much. But let's go back to where things aren't quite so spooky. Let's go back to the friendly, definitely mugger-free streets of London. It's going to be Machi's pick, and this will be King's Row. So again, this is actually one that Ardeont are pretty happy with, but you know, if we take this concept of the maps that are neutral territory, yeah, Lijiang Tower is one of them. King's Row's got to be the other.
Yeah, the very accepting, non-discriminatory streets of King's Row has to be a very interesting map that we see where usually this is the direct follow-up from Lijiang Tower in a series.
Usually. There have been some exceptions. There have been some interesting exceptions. But that's the thing is, like, Ardeont, pretty much every series they've played has gone some variation of Lijiang Tower, King's Row. I don't actually think they've played a single series yet where they haven't, on the Control and Hybrid, gone to at least one of those two maps. Sometimes when a team has the Control pick and they've got something they like, they've taken it to somewhere else. And sometimes when the enemy team has the hybrid pick, they take it to somewhere else. But every team likes Lijiang Tower, and every team likes King's Row. Ardeont are basically guaranteed to pick them.
The one exception to that is Ardeont versus Flash Wolves, where it was Nepal and then Numbani, so that's a little bit of a weird spanner in the works there, just to spice things up, just to change the pacing of the map selection. It was that one Numbani map that was fated that Flash Wolves did win, so now that we head into King's Row against Machi, this has to be a turning point for Machi if anything is to happen, because we were at this point yesterday against Ardeont. It was Mega versus Ardeont. Mega had a good showing on Ilios on the control map. They got ruins. This time around, Machi nearly got themselves a well pickup. Possibly could have gotten themselves a well pickup. Didn't quite get, sorry, not a well pickup, a Gardens pickup. Didn't quite get there. What is going to happen on this King's Row? Because when it was Mega versus Ardeont on the hybrid, didn't look too pretty.
It's kind of hard to distinguish between those two because they've both got an inexplicable bottomless pit, right? Like, the well you can kind of understand, I suppose, because it is a well.
Garden's a pond.
Thing is, like, you can still fall down a well and survive. By the way, we do just have a bit of a pause out here, so should be a quick fix. But, yeah, look, you can fall down a well and survive, I guess. But, like, it's at least plausible. The pond, first of all, where is the water? So, like, how are the fish in it? Second of all, what even is it? Like, it's just this inexplicable bottomless pit
3D
with holographic fish.
They're not real fish.
Yeah, but it's like, why not have like a bottom, but also a hologram above it? Why does it have to be a bottomless pit? Isn't that just dangerous?
So my lore theory for this is the pond of Lijiang Tower Gardens. You jump down, it directly leads to Sanctum of Nepal, and then when you look at, what is it? Volskaya Industries.
The cars on Volskaya.
The cars that drive off the map drive directly through the tunnels and out into Oasis. So
yeah,
that's how the maps are interconnected.
Everything's connected. Like, I feel like you've got like at home this like corkboard of like all the maps with like red pins and like thread between them all. Like, it's connected. Everything's connected.
This is how you travel quickly between the maps.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And like, okay, so at the end of Eichenwald, when you're in the castle, if you actually go to like the far room of that castle, that's actually the beginning spawn room for the attacking side on King's Row. It's the same building. It's just the far wing of that palace. You know, they're connected. You walk through a door.
I would like to see some more interconnectivity between maps, like the fact that all of the control maps are 3 stages on one big map that you can actually see all together if you zoom out far enough in a spectator mode. So kind of want to see some progression like that, you know, kind of it's themed like if there was an assault version of Eichenwald that it's just on a separate part of it. Kind of like, what is it, Dorado, and what is the TDM map that they have as well that I can't remember?
The Castillo.
Yeah, something Castillo.
Castillo, yeah. Like you can
like
see
that. Like you can see
if you go like
connected.
Yeah, you go like half a kilometer down the coast and you get to Castillo. Like that. Well, and then there's
actually there's an Eichenwald and what is that? That Black Forest.
Black Forest, yeah.
With Eichenwald, Temple of Anubis, and
Necropolis
that you've already mentioned.
And then there's just like
there's Castle Guillard is somewhere
Chateau
else.
Guillard.
Chateau Guillard is
in the middle of France.
Somewhere.
Yeah. There's no other maps in France yet either. Like, I'm waiting for like, I don't know, an escort map or something that's in like a vineyard. That's in like the Champagne region of France. And you're just like shuffling a cart between rows of grapes. I'd like that. I really like that. I like the idea. I like the idea that somehow a vineyard is a strategic location.
Well, that's the thing. That's the thing, because some of the maps in Overwatch don't really make sense in terms of why the objective matters, like Hollywood. Why does that objective matter? So then you go to the French vineyard, and actually all you're doing is transporting wine from one side of the vineyard to the other.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, you complete your task. You're a mercenary getting paid to do this, where your life is at risk. but all you're transporting is wine. It makes no sense.
Hollywood makes perfect sense, because what you're doing is you're trying to shut down the American propaganda machine. Because all the Overwatch heroes had movies made about them. So by shutting down Hollywood, you shut down the positive press that Overwatch gets. Talon are playing like 4-dimensional space chess. You know, don't just go after the heroes, go after Overwatch. Like, whoa. Even though it's already shut down. Well, everything may be connected, but we are only on King's Row, not any other map. I don't know how you get from one to the other. Just catch a plane out of
Are there, in the standard sets of maps, are there maps from the same country? Is there,
They're not.
There's not a second China map. There's not a second UK map.
The closest, I think, geographically, might actually be Watchpoint Gibraltar and Temple of Anubis. Maybe. Well, actually, no, because Eichenwald would be closer. In any case, King's Row is a thing. And it's going to be Machi on the attack first, so Ardeont are opting into the defense. Also mirrored here just about. We've got the Junkrat out, but we've actually got an Ana on both sides. That is an attack Ana.
So we have seen some Ursa's Junkrat already, and it's interesting we're going to swap DM off the Tracer completely now, so we're not going to have any strong flanking. This is going to be a very much stand your boots in the ground kind of defense from Ardeont. Really sink your feet in there, because no one's moving.
Look at the charge that NoTalk has already. I'd be curious to see how much Michelle has got, because this is really going to pay off for them. They can leverage that Zarya a lot. And there it goes as Republic gets charged out of the picture. They do get a kill through onto Cap, but the respawn's closer, and they're keeping these members caught off. Now the overwhelming damage can come out from NoTalk, and he's able to keep himself alive pretty easily. Ardeont trying to kind of wheel around to the far side of this, catch a couple of members of Machi from behind, throwing out now the Riptire, catches Nuns, but that's all it's got. And again, the respawns are closer, so Ardeont kind of getting slowly pressured back here from Machi.
And this is going to be when Machi Esports actually get themselves a little bit of Limited Supreme action, where Limited Supreme got this first egg attack from King's Row against Ardeont very quickly. They did that through Jasper's Zarya play. NoTalk might be able to do that as well. He's been on 100 charge for so long, but there it goes, 100 to 0.
Yep, that's the thing. When you're dead, you don't really have ult charge at all. It might as well be 0. You're quite right.
Well, energy I'm talking about, but ult charge is definitely among the things that go to...
It's both. It's the both, right? Because he was also ahead of Michelle in terms of the grab. And there was going to be this window where you had the grab and 100 charge where Michelle didn't. That would have been a moment of capitalization to get this final third, and it's completely vanished now for Machi.
And Machi had a great start as well, because D-Crown charged Republic out of the way. They got rid of one of the main tanks there, but DM, he struck back. He got a kill onto Camp. Ursa as well got a kill into the backside, so you never really converted enough kills from the Machi side. But now finally, for the play.
Just everyone's just stuck in a grab. No one moves. And Nuns does get 2 in. That's the cue to go. They're able to open up the fight off the back of that dead eye that unfortunately was not able to get matched by DM. And that is the cap. It's the cap on a route actually if Michelle's not careful.
It's a big route as well. We still have members trying to fall out here, and actually Republic respawns in a precarious situation. The good news is he's able to utilize the shield straight away. His team will thank him for that one, but the bad thing would have been if Machi continued that roll on through, there was a potential they clean up additional kills, including Republic. So Ardeont, they get up with their members alive, now they can set up for another defense.
Ursa's got a pretty nice position here actually, because he's got the Riptire available as well. There it goes out.
Let it rip.
He's just looking to get Rescue and Kiyomi. That's all he wants, but nice coverage by Nuns to read where that was coming from. Ursa's going to have to actually back off and regroup with his team here, because Machi are going to be looking for a fight.
Ursa and Nuns are wasting each other's time here, so it's going to be 5-on-5.
Earthshatter, it was decent, but actually it missed some members because they were displaced by other means. They do get the kill though onto Republic, and they're getting the pressure down, so they get the payload underway at least, but that was a good retreat by Ardeont.
We're still waiting to see where Ursa is so far on the map, because Nuns has disengaged from that 1v1, and the cart movement was very important from Machi Esports. They are getting the progress that they've been looking for. 3 minutes and 5 seconds just about remaining now, and Machi Esports still look like they have a lot of priority here in terms of pushing momentum.
Well, it turns out that's where Ursa is, and he's got DM on the far side of that as well, but that gets red as Kant falls back to catch it. They need to get a little bit more done than that, though. Need to close out on Republic, and unfortunately not quite able to do so, and it's Machi getting routed out. So that flank does ultimately pay off for Ardeont.
Yeah, Ursa had a situation where he almost killed Kant with a, I think it's called Total Mayhem, the passer where he drops all the grenades there.
It is.
Kant nearly even died to that, so that was a very precarious situation for Machi Esports. And while Ursa was flanking, the rest of Ardeont capitalized. You had the tanks move up, Republic picked up kills, and Machi got routed.
Now, if you want to look back at that Zarya 1 versus 1 where they both grabbed at the same time on point A, Michelle has the ultimate and also has that huge charge. No Talk has to rebuild the charge, doesn't have the ultimate yet either. There is now a big window for Ardeont if they can land that grab.
Here's the window.
Oh, there it is. They're going to throw Junkrat stuff right into the mix of it. No Talk actually going down to the damage from the grab. It's super unfortunate. And they didn't even need to combo ultimates with it, even though they had ultimates to combo. They just had so much upfront damage out of Ursa.
And insult to injury there as well from Ursa, who was just looking to use his concussive mind to jump up to the high ground, kills Nuns in the middle of it, and what a great combo, everything considered. When you have the grab, Ursa on the flank as well, puts in a ton of AoE damage, nothing much he can do there.
Yeah, unfortunately, those Junkrat traps...
Oh, speaking of traps.
Oh my god, no match for Nuns' guns in the 1 vs 1s. That's Ursa getting another one too, why not? This is just really rough actually for Machi.
And the thing that teams need to be used to here is really looking out for those traps, because you need to keep your eyes onto the ground, find the steel traps. If you do not find them, a single kill comes out, and one pick is often enough for a team like Ardeont to really get a lot of mileage. This time around, it does get spotted by Nuns, who's now a little bit wiser.
Again, no match for the guns. Now Machi actually have a good chunk of ultimates up. They've got a really good opportunity to go if they can land.
Another flank.
And it's a huge one, and already Ursa set up to capitalize off the Earth Shatter. Again, we actually see someone going down to the upfront damage from the ultimate and not just the follow-up. We don't see that a whole lot, but clean up there for Ardeont. Really solid hold.
Well, the thing here is that Ursa did die in that, so it's a little bit greedy for Ursa to take that 1v1 in what is not favored for him at all, going up against None. So for Machi Esports, while Ursa is coming back from the respawn room, if they can get a little bit distance here, get a little bit aggressive, make their move before Ursa really gets into action. Mind you, Ursa also has to take good positioning. This is where they can succeed.
That's what they've been after, but there's the instant answer with the Riptide looking to get around the side, and Ardeont have survived the upfront damage thanks to the sound barrier. Both the supports with the one Rip Tire means the fight is all but done for Machi, and with only just over 10 seconds, now just under 10 seconds actually, it looks like they're not going to get back on this card. The respawn's only just coming through, and they're not anywhere near enough to it. No members on here like a Winston that can dive for the payload to force the overtime, and that is going to be a really clean hold from Ardeont on the streets phase.
And the pacing from Ardeont there was so critical. They controlled and dictated every single engagement, the positions for those engagements. It was Machi consistently on the back foot. Even at the end there, you kind of question, okay, where does the Tracer go in this composition? Because DM, he's playing the McCree now. Ursa, he's onto the Junkrat, but the spirit of the Tracer lives on in the Junkrat Riptire. So you have both the DPSs, and then sometimes when Junkrat has ult, also a Tracer.
Who was that we were talking about the other day? I believe it was Shailin. Someone who was playing the Junkrat.
It was him and Dizzy.
Yeah. And it was this really funny thing, right? Because Shailin is a Tracer player, and he uses his Junkrat ties exactly like a Tracer. He gets sneaky, he goes for flanks, and he tries to pick off backliners. Dizzy plays it like a soldier player. He shoots it right into the front of you and kills 3 people.
And Ursa plays it like a Genji player. Right up the top, very good aerial momentum there.
Yeah.
Dives it run from above you.
It's very loud. Sometimes it kills 5 people, sometimes it kills none. What would happen if like a Winston does it? Like, does the tire drop in and then like with the sounds of a revving engine says sorry for dropping in?
It's the hardest Riptide to kill you've ever tried. It's just, it doesn't go down. It doesn't die. Just like a Winston, it's just, why does it live for so long? I don't understand.
And if it's a Reinhardt main, then the tire transforms to like a BMW wheel, precision German engineering. Instead of being like this really rustic Junkertown tire, it's like really like gorgeously made.
So the wheel doesn't explode. What it does is impale you and run you over, and that's how you die instead.
Whoa!
That's precision German Junkrat Riptire right there.
If Junkrat were German. Junkrat.
Reporting for you.
This one's for you. Let's not go down this rabbit hole.
Oh,
Ardeont now on the attack. Thanks to that solid defense, only have to get the cap and get past about halfway through that streets phase. So looking good. They just need to be able to break this defense in a timely fashion, and already off to a good start as they pressure out Machi.
And excited to see what Ursa does on the Tracer as well, because it's not something we usually see him play, and something we're going to see a little bit less of as he gets sent back to the respawn room by Nuns.
That was a really nice headshot. They do lose Kant, unfortunately. They need to not lose anyone else because their respawns are longer, but by catching Republic, they should buy enough time for Kant to regroup.
An instant swap by Erster onto the Genji as well. He's not having any more of that. You know what? I don't like Tracer anyway. It's back on the Genji. This is what I like to do. This is what I know. And there's a reason for that.
It's like he was playing, oh wow, yep. Catches nuns, there you go. Instantly, that's what Erster can do on this Genji, and the pressure now comes around. He's already looking for Restia and Kiyomi. Some nice sleep darts to buy some time, and they lose Republic and Animo, which means Erster actually having to back out now and can't rejoin the fray. He make it out with his life, but they've been helped.
Yeah, Erster manages to get away there as Cat misses the rocket punch and hits it directly into the wall, so that's when you're very unhappy. You just punch that wall. Finds Erster anyway, and this staggered kill is going to waste a little bit more of Ardeont's time. So far, we're having a very slow attack through from Ardeont. The biggest problem here for Ardeont is actually Machi have gone their ultimates first. They get first dibs on rotations. Expect either Earthshatter or Graviton Surge, and it's going to be the grab.
It's going to be the grab, but they do want to try and draw some ultimates out of Ardeont.
They have none.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing, is they don't want to commit too many ultimates because they don't want to commit them all and then end up behind in terms of ult charge. Losing Nuns and Camp, both of them, when able to just barely keep No Talk alive, is big for them. They're not going to quite get the respawn on Nuns, though, before Erster is back in this fight.
So this is a big fight now because the power play and the power spike does go onto the Ardeont side. They have their ultimates finally. They're about to hit the big 6, and for Machi Esports, if an Earthshatter lands and it lands good, Machi can still win.
Instant connection as they get all these backliners. Good Earthshatter from D-Crown to buy some space. The Earthshatter from Republic is even bigger as everyone is flat on their backs as the hammer swings around them. That's going to be the point cap from Ardeont. Wow.
That was a good play from D-Crown. It did look very positive for Machi for the most part. They just needed one successful Earthshatter where they eliminate the big ultimates from the Ardeont side, but you forgot about Republic. You didn't see the angle that he approached from, and D-Crown didn't have his shield in time to block Republic out, so a huge turnaround from Ardeont, an important one as well, because that was a fight Ardeont were expected to win, and so they did.
Yeah, you forgot about Dre Public.
Erster.
Erster trying to get a little bit too sneaky there, but they've at least got time here, and that is the change up for him as well. That's a good headshot on Kant. That actually means every individual kill Ardeont are able to get is going to get them progress on the card. That's what's going to count here, because they don't have to get past halfway in the street space.
So far, this is a good stall out from Machi, though. You do have to consider that the card hasn't really moved. DM now getting himself a decent amount of kills and sleep dart onto D-Crown as well. This is all falling apart quick for Machi.
And that was with the nano boost on as well. Now Erster's able to rejoin the fight. These respawns massively favor Ardeont right now. Machi getting completely picked apart. Able to pull back, but it's not looking good for them. Only one last chance to fight now before the cap.
Oh, well, Machi just have to rotate their ultimates correctly here, and they're about to get back onto the power ult of Earthshatter and Graviton Surge. This is what won them the fights in the first place. They need to tap back into that power and win some fights again, because we are into the final stages of this King's Row map.
They've got to go now, but Erster's got the flank around them, so as the grab connects, they're struggling to get the follow-up because the pincer movement was set up by Ardeont, and you can see it in Erster getting all those kills through. That's going to cause the cap in pretty spectacular fashion out of Ardeont.
It was well played positionally from Ardeont side as well. If you look at the way they moved as the Graviton Surge came out, they understood exactly how to dodge that to make sure not everyone was going to get caught in there, so they had the flank available to make their play. So this is Republic, who actually did get caught in the Earthshatter himself, but lands up, or rather rises up and lands his own Earthshatter, which was even bigger.
It's like even more precise German engineering. Like there's precision German engineering, and then there's like even more precise. I don't know. I'm trying to think of a good comparison.
I don't even know how. Like what kind of?
It's like what's?
I can't find a good example.
This thing is like what's even more precise than precision? I don't know. It's like laser cut German engineering.
It goes inverse when you get so precise that it just goes the other way. So I don't know. Anyway, that's going to be the 2-0 now from Ardeont so far. King's Row. So not from Machi. It's not a 1-1. It's Ardeont taking out King's Row. So fairly smooth 2-0, all things considered. Some good pickups from Machi, especially on that King's Row A defense. You really got to compliment the amount of fights they did win in a row.
And taking a look at a replay now here, this is going to be on their attack where they did break the point, right? And this is where we said they had the advantage, but look at how far back they play it, right? They don't play this one on the point. They actually keep Machi kind of in their own choke point. The Graviton was good, and what it meant is they couldn't follow up on D-Crown's Earth Shatter. If anything, D-Crown's Earth Shatter, good as it was actually damage control so that the follow-up couldn't quite come out of the Grav. But Republic was still in position behind them and was able to get a big enough Earth Shatter anyway. And a lot of that was just the ultimate advantage. There was the Grav and Earth Shatter to just the Earth Shatter out of Machi.
To be fair, that was just a big mistake from the Machi side because they saw Republic back there. They didn't deal with him. They didn't consider that actually he was going to have an Earth Shatter as well. Immediately after they cleaned up the members, they did Earth Shatter, except Republic. They turned around straight away. Everyone turned their backs to Republic, and that was when he struck him. You're going to learn that one and feel it now.
And they were all squishy members as well. Like the first people right in front of him were a Lucio and a McCree. They're going to die, basically straight away. The rest of the members on the other side of that, we're getting taken out by Ardeont's DPSs. I mean, it was the Dream Earth Shatter pretty much, right? The fact that the last man standing on the side of Machi after that was D-Crown tells you exactly how well that was executed from Ardeont, because they landed it on all the members, they picked off all the squishies, and then of course it's the tank left standing, but they're not tanking for anyone at that point.
It's a really interesting scenario because you could see what Machi were motioning for as soon as they landed at Ursha. They got the kills first off. Ursa was a big one who died during a nanoblade. That's a huge pickup, by the way. But they were really threatened by the members that were already on the camp. So two things: threatened by the actual damage output from the Ardeont members surviving the Ursha on the camp. Secondly, to actually stop the camp itself. So in terms of priority, they kind of had it correct, but they just didn't consider that there was a counter Earth Shatter play that was about to come out. If they did consider that, they could have had D-Crown block it, they could have D-Crown do something about that, and the rest of the players from Machi contest a cap. But hindsight 2020, right?
Yeah. The thing is as well, after that was a bit of another unfortunate moment for Machi when they went for that bookstore hold. They committed the nano boost onto D-Crown and he was in a great position to go and got hit by a sleep dart. The reality is the Reinhardt is very exposed to that sleep dart, especially when the shield is down, so that's not too surprising. It's quite telegraphed when the nano boost comes in and the Reinhardt gets close that they're going to try and go melee and do damage, but it was a well-landed sleep dart when it counted, and again, it was the capitalization that just left Machi really split up.
All right, we're going to take a short break now, but when we do come back, it's going to be Machi and Ardeont facing off once again for the third map. It's going to be Assault and potentially the final opportunity for Machi to bring it home. We'll see you after this break. Welcome back once again, ladies and gentlemen, to OPC Season 2. About to continue the matchup of the first one of the evening, rather. It's Ardeont taking on Machi, and so far, Ardeont leading 2-0.
We're just saying, like, we are now on the cusp of just getting, like, the Ardeont special, where they go to Lijiang Tower, then King's Row, then Horizon Lunar Colony. And you actually mentioned they do have good performances on Temple of Anubis, and you're absolutely not wrong, but...
That's most team special.
Yeah,
is that order of maps.
Exactly. I wouldn't be surprised to see Horizon Lunar Colony here, and it is, of course, Ardeont's pick, given that they had that home side, so it's either going to be that or Temple. It's probably going to be Horizon.
I think either would be extremely comfortable for this team, and look, Machi are on their final legs now. They have their final opportunity to make a mark, and they had some good moments on King's Row that they can bring over to Assault. And when you really think about what those good moments were, it was the King's Row A defense. That's when they got a lot of mileage, they got a lot of fight wins, and they nearly had moments where they could have held that even further. So far, when Machi have done well, it's kind of like good, nearly, but not quite enough.
The thing that they're going to have to face up to, though, is on Assault, Ardeont are really great at snowballing. And the unfortunate thing is actually on that King's Row defense, the snowball was really there, right? They then immediately got this really scattered fight where they kind of got picked off a little bit. And it was, I touched on it a moment ago, you know, the sweep dart onto D-Crown and all these little things here and there. And it ended up being an absolute rout. And, well, shoot me in the face because it's going to be neither of those. We're going to Hanamura, boys.
That is a strong way to describe that. Shoot you in the face. I hope not.
Shoot me in the face. I mean, you gotta be putting my groceries away.
Shoot Pixie and not me, because I'm not asking for that, but he is. That's fine. I've never seen that. Okay, this is interesting.
I don't understand how this arcade game is meant to work, eh?
It's Pong. It's 3D Pong.
But it also has, like, breakout bricks above it, so it's like...
4D Pong.
It's fourth dimensional space Pong.
Played by Genjis.
Played by two cybernetic ninjas. That's, I mean, guys, this is the true face of esports. You might not like it, but that's the way it is.
It's the real game.
Yeah, you're not a real gamer unless.
That's what happens when you design a game, and then a game within that game becomes the real esport. And that's how that's how MOBAs were created.
I was thinking more of something like Gwent. Which is literally like, our minigame was so great, we turned it into just a game. Well, in any case...
When you're so good at making games, the mini-game within the game you make is actually really good as well.
But this is the thing, is like, there's an arcade here in Hanamura, so it's full of all kinds of games.
I'd play some of those. They're
oh yeah,
good.
And a lot of them, it's like, what are some of the names of them? Because they're like really close to some of Blizzard's other games. Like, there's something that's
I think there's VV's Adventure, or am I confusing that with the Pro Team?
I don't know. There's one as well, it's like a something or other here, like Heroes of the something, and it's like a side-scroller, like Metal Slug-looking game, but it's like...
That looks fun.
Heroes of the Storm.
That's one of my favorite arcade games.
Because now Hanamura is a map on Heroes of the Storm as well, so like, how deep does it go? On the Heroes of the Storm Hanamura map, is there an arcade that has like Overwatch heroes in a side-scrolling shooter?
You know what?
I need answers.
One of those side-scrolling shooters, one of those side-scrolling arcade games in the Hanamura arcade might just get made one day. Just like, I don't know if you remember this, but for Diablo 3, when they released the expansion, they made a mini game which was basically Flappy Bird, but it was just Malthael instead collecting souls. So a little bit a darker version of Flappy Bird. That's what I'm saying, is these small arcade type of games
and then actually,
do come out here and there.
You're actually quite right, and then actually they released Flappy Bird and Hearthstone as well.
I took a second, a little bit of interesting, because I took that quite literally. I'm like, no, they didn't. And I was like, oh, yes.
Don't be ridiculous. They did.
They did.
Well, actually, in Hearthstone, they've just done like raid bosses. So they've kind of incorporated MMOs into that with some of the special like Lich King promotions that they did at Gamescom, I believe it was. So there you go.
You believe correct.
The crossovers are real, boys, but this is just Overwatch. No bells, no whistles, no frills, just Overwatch, and it's Hanamura.
Ursa's got whistles because he's playing the Mei again. We already saw this yesterday against Mega on Volskaya. He's going to bring it out again this time on Hanamura. Actually, this is one of the classic places where you do bring out a Mei, at least in a matchmaking kind of a scenario, but here we're going to see in a pro game.
Well, that's an opening pick onto Kiyomi, so Machi unfortunately getting a little bit beaten back out the gate there. They do actually get the one good pick in among that, but they're kind of having a hard time converting more off that. Now, Kent is kind of stuck on the wrong side of this fight, has to wait for his own team to regroup before he can really do much.
Well, so a slow start so far, and they need to get past this wall effectively, and they do have the team composition to do that. Every single member, bar Kiyomi, can get past this ice wall with relative ease, so that's something they can work with and something they should take advantage of.
Yeah, look, Kiyomi, he can pass into the iris, but he can't pass through ice.
Yeah, he needs an upgrade. Look, if it was German-made Zenyatta, look, that he would pass through ice. I'm telling you now.
Precision German robot monks. And these ice walls are just having such a devastating effect. Kant now finally getting picked off on the far side of the fight there as he tried to kind of regroup with the team. Nuns as well going down, and that is a great placement on the pulse bomb. Again, it's like, DM is just like, no, it's my kill feed. I own it.
He's not quite done just yet. He might have to back off here if Kant really wants to challenge him, but even the 1v1, you got to think DM would be interested in taking that. That's a big kill onto Ursa because finally they get past the ice wall. More importantly, Ursa respawns and regroups, reinforces very slowly on the Mei, and the Blizzard is off the table for the time being if Machi can go in now.
And they are going to go in, but they need to capitalize on top of going in as well.
Oh,
what a sleep dart! And they've got that sound barrier to at least keep them safe for the time being, committing the Transcendence, but it doesn't save Restia. Now Ursa will be able to rejoin this fight in time, and Machi already at a numbers disadvantage. Now they're trying to get some work done. There's Nuns at last able to get some damage in here, but the trade kill does come through. Ursa did go down in that off the side, so he's not able to commit the Blizzard. Will at least have it for point B, but Machi have broken the hold. They're going to get the point A cap.
We didn't quite see how Ursa went down. I want to believe that he suicided on purpose to respawn at B to have this ice ball and rather Blizzard as well combination ready to go for this defense. You need to be able to sort of tide over this Machi momentum play that they're about to come in with, and the best way to do that is to throw down a Blizzard that can just block them off.
I kind of like the self name drop there for Blizzard.
It's in every game.
It's like when they were making the game, they were like, you know what? Us. That ultimate's going to just be called Us.
That's a good one at that. Have to see how Ursa exactly wants to commit this one.
That's a great ice ball to isolate out. Isolate. These members here of Machi Esports. They go 1 for 1, but with the respawns favoring Ardeont. Actually, Machi committing this Primal Rage really need to get some conversion off it, but the Blizzard is going to get committed into that anyway. The self-destruct from No Talk doesn't have too much effects because Ardeont just kind of largely block it up with their own Diva there, and No Talk was dead before he could get back in the mech anyway, and now with that, Ursa wants to swap off.
And that's a well-played moment by Ursa as well. He knew he needed to save the Blizzard out of A, use it onto B to stabilize for his team, and then swap off to something a little bit more effective onto Doomfist as well. The best part about the Blizzard ultimate out of main from Ursa was the fact that it charges everyone else's ultimate. It doesn't do enough damage to get the kills themselves, but it does CC enough members on the Machi side that it enables the rest of Ardeont to collect those kills, then charge their own ultimates, and now we're in a situation where Ardeont, macro-wise, ult economy-wise, look healthy.
And Machi committed a lot of ultimates into that fight that they maybe didn't need to. Good placement on the self-destruct. It kind of cuts off Machi's attack, and they get the kills converted, mostly out of the pulse bomb to start with, gave them the numbers advantage. But really, that's just press ganging Machi, who were a little bit mispositioned after that self-destruct. Very nicely handled by Ardeont.
So just chasing members on the outside as well. They might get some additional kills. You'd think maybe Ursa lands the rocket punch onto Nuns. That puts Machi a little bit further behind, but going to opt for the safer play here. Don't throw away your own life. Don't risk it unnecessarily. And Ardeont so far have done a decent job, a very good job rather, of staving off this Machi offense.
Man, I just had a thought, like, what if you could deflect Rocket Punch and, like, Doomfist just punches himself?
And lore-wise, I'd like to believe only a Rocket Punch could deflect another one.
And speaking of Rocket Punch, the insta-gib on Kant is great for them. They do get the trade kill here, and Machi have still got this Dragon Blade that they can convert off, but with Kiyomi dead, they're just really struggling to get their own ultimates online while also drawing them out of Ardeont, because Ardeont are just straight up out-fragging. They don't need to commit ultimates to win.
And it's the area control here that is so important from Ardeont. We talk about the fact that they dictate pacing of fights very effectively. They're doing it again now on Hanamura. They continually choose where the fights are happening. And for Machi Esports, you want to be going onto the cap here. You want to be taking the higher ground where you're doing it. And Ardeont are not going to let you do that because they're forcing these fights in very narrow corridors where Ursa is going to be a big impactful force.
Speaking of impactful force, look at their positioning around the side here. That's another great instant pick there. Nuns has to open up, and he does get some work done, but if Kant goes down before he gets the tactical visor, which he indeed does, they're not going to get much work done. And there's a bit of a late transcendence out of Animo. but it pays off, I suppose.
Ultimately, that's a big win for Machi Esports when you consider that because the Dragon Blade was used finally, that they were able to initiate somewhat with the composition. Ardeont were forced to use ultimates. In this case, both of the support ultimates are now off the table. That's a big plus. It's a 1-for-2 trade on Machi's side, and they're feeling good about it.
Pleased as punch. Interesting here to see actually Animo is currently on the Zenyatta with Jeff on the Ana. It is because Jeff is their Ana player, but it means no Jeff Zenyatta. So this is Animo sort of on a champion he doesn't actually play a whole lot.
Speaking of something that doesn't get played a whole lot by certain players, Nun's on the Tracer as well. It's going to be a little bit of a question mark. We'll have to see how he plays it. They can kill Ursa here, that'll be pretty big.
But they aren't quite able to convert. Now they're having to kind of play damage control to keep Kant alive as Decrown looking to go aggressive. And a great self-destruct again to split up these members of Machi. Now they start to capitalize with Kant and DM both just causing, sorry, Ursa and DM rather causing chaos in this back line. Machi unable to make the breakthrough. Now Kant set up. They lose Nuns on the side of that as he goes over the edge. He's got no targets. Michelle's going to pop up that defense matrix. He didn't have any teammates following up either. This just seems really miscommunicated from Machi.
The other issue here is that for Machi, you would prefer Nuns to be playing the Soldier because he's usually the Soldier player. You prefer Kant to be playing the Tracer as he's usually the Tracer player. You don't even have time to change anymore. You're in a position in the game, less than 1 minute to go. You have to make work with the composition that you have right now.
And again, Ardeont are just running circles around Machi. Kant got nothing with the tactical visor because they weren't even playing on the point, Ardeont. They're playing around the sides here, and it's consistently paying off. They are forcing Machi into awkward positions. They're cutting them off on the setup play, and they're getting kills while doing it. And it just means Machi, they're losing time, and they're never even getting the opportunity to fight success.
And unfortunately, Machi eventually have to just get forced to play the main entrance here. They have to go underneath this battlement section. That doesn't favor their composition whatsoever, so no matter what happens, Ardeont kind of get the favorable interaction here. They can either force the fight in the narrow corridor or force Machi to go underneath, and neither of those are favorable for Machi.
Pulse Bomb goes wide for Nuns, and Ardeont have all the ultimates available now. It's going to be the Transcendence first. Meteor Strike just to try and cut off members, look for kills. And there's no targets because they're all dying to the remainder of Ardeont who are still in the fight. First they're getting to pop up on No Talk. It's not even really going to count for much because essentially the fight is as good as one. The self-destruct from No Talk. It looks pretty and Spyworks on the point, but the man is dead. Kant finally finds targets with the tactical visor. Something was in his sights this time, but it wasn't the point. And that's going to be the full hold on point B from Ardeont.
And you think from Machi as well, they had the correct composition, they had the correct answer to the way Ardeont were playing much earlier on. They were playing Nuns into the Genji, they had Kant onto a Tracer earlier on as well. If they continue running the Tracer Genji, they could then play the middle ground. They can go through the main gate, they can even opt for a left side flank push. They don't have to keep going on the top right because that is where Ardeont was stopping them every single time. So Machi, they needed other options and they never really figured it out.
Now on their own offense, Ardeont. I mentioned this before the map got picked. They're really good at snowballing on Assault specifically. All they need to do is snowball into a third. This is really, really achievable for them. It is going to be a hard ask for Machi. Effectively, Machi need a first hold, Ardeont, and if the first hold gets broken, they need to retreat quickly and cleanly, no exceptions.
And they need to do essentially what Ursa was doing on A. As soon as Ardeont realized that they were losing that fight, as soon as they realized the cap was going to go, Ursa suicides off to the side. I'm going to speculate that's what he did because we didn't see how he died, but we know that he suicided some way. He saves the Blizzard ultimate for the next defense. That was very successful, then changes onto a Doomfist. This is the kind of adaptation that you want to see out of Machi on their own defense if they want to be successful.
So you just
try not to get yourselves killed out there.
Just translocating back and forth across the gap. You know, the only other thing it actually may have been out of Ursa because he was still looking to rejoin the team is may have been trying to do something with the ice wall to sort of cross the gap between points A and B.
And slipped off.
Yeah, and like
slippery wall.
Because you can't. Well, the thing is, you can actually jump and place the ice wall beneath you to catch you. And if he maybe missed that a little bit, then he could have gone over the edge. It could have still been accidental, but I would have imagined he would have been past that point anyway. I saw somebody pick onto DM actually from Nuns.
Well, if there's anything I've learned about Ardeont is that nothing is accidental on this team. Everything is done with a purpose and with a reason. So, Ardeont now on this attack. Just got to get past Nuns as Junkrat spam. wait for the respawns, which has already happened, and already taking positioning now around this Machi defense.
They've got the tools here to hold this one out, actually. They've got some good ultimate charge as well, but they need to get a few more picks now. They need to get the pressure. They need to actually close out kills. That's the way to go, actually. Now, Esther is a little bit on the wrong side of this, but they've got great pressure on the deep ground. They could close out that kill, not quite able to follow it up just yet. Ooh, great pick on Zakan out of Esther to find that target. Now they can actually open up. They're already on the point as well, actually, so now actually have to keep committing. They can't really step off it and regroup themselves. They get the pressure in, though, as Nun's going to get two, and the sound barrier keeps them safe. Now actually Ardeont kind of on the wrong side of this fight. Good pick actually out of Michelle. They're staying in this one here, Ardeont. They've got no choice but to. They don't have a retreat path, so they might as well commit to the fight and commit well. And that's going to be Erster getting two with the Dragon Blade to secure point A. They don't quite have the huge stagger kills here, though, so maybe no snowball.
Ardeont, again, they adapt so well to that because they look at the defense of Machi. What Machi can do is bunker themselves up and hunker down very effectively. You're never going to try and fight Nuns in a closed space, so they go for the point instead. They force the cap and they force Machi out of the hiding spot.
Wow, instant double kill out of DM. 3 for good measure. And remember how I said maybe no snowball? Well, turns out I was wrong, because DM had other thoughts about the matter. It's now just the stall out of no talk. As he loses, the mech has no self-destruct to get it back, and that is already going to be the third just about there. The last member of Machi stepping off it. That is very quick from Ardeont to complete their 3-0.
They just had all the tools required there. They didn't use too many ultimates to take A. They didn't try and overextend too far. They held something in the reserve. They had some extra gas in the tank, and they used it to great effect. They knew they only had one cap, or rather one tick, to fight through a cap, and they did just that.
On the whole, that was just really well done by Ardeont. I mean, there's no two ways about it, right? The point B defense, they were constantly shutting down Machi before Machi could even get set up. On their own offense, Machi actually got them into a really tight spot, but that's the thing with Ardeont. Yeah, they were in a tight spot, but they didn't make a single misplay from that point. They went, okay, given the situation, what exactly do we need to do to recover from this and still get a win out of this? And they realized that that was, we have to fight and convert kills. We have to do so safely. So they stayed fairly clustered. They played it safe. They didn't let themselves get split up further, given that they were cut off from their retreat path. And then when they did commit for the fight fully, it was because they'd been able to charge up ultimates. They'd stayed alive for just long enough and were able to take the fight pretty convincing fashion. And point B was the same. They just had the ultimates to convert and did so instantly. Off the back of that, a very clean 3-0 out of Ardeont, especially on Hanamura.
It's now the clean sweep from Ardeont. Let's take a look at exactly how they achieved it. This is going to be the replay onto A of Machi's original attack, and this should be the one we'll actually clean it out against Ardeont. We may actually even see exactly how Ursa went down here, but they get a decent number of kills here. If I'm not mistaken, Nuns also commits the Dragon Blade, gets slept right away. Oh, they said actually the sleep happened before, so he actually woke up from the sleep, maintained the Dragon Blade because he never really finished handling it, and then used it to great effect to clean up the kills.
The thing that was interesting there is Restia was able to commit the sound barrier. He was the first casualty of the fight for Machi, and Kiyomi wasn't quite able to catch him in the Transcendence, but they converted kills during that Transcendence, and that's what really counted. And off the back of the sound barrier, they were able to gain the positioning they needed to convert those kills with the Transcendence. So the defensive ultimates were leveraged very well for Machi. Actually, that was just a well-executed fight on the whole. They also took advantage of that respawn window with Erster, where he hadn't actually rejoined the fight just yet. Then, of course, was the fact that he unfortunately went off the edge at one point. I agree with you. I think it was a suicide. They'd already lost a member. They were about to lose Michelle's mech, and they didn't really have the DPS and the positioning to stay in the fight.
So this is going to be a really important tank here from Ardeont. Now check the positioning. What Machi do here is pretty smart. They understand they have the better defensive hold here. You're never going to have a very aggressive play from Ardeont when there's a Junkrat on the table. So it's got to be Machi now hunkering down, hiding inside this room to the left. Nuns picking up kills as they do that. Now Ursa's positioning is very smart, because as soon as Machi actually want to break out of this hold, Ursa can get the flank on them now, because the cap is going over just as the second tick is about to get there as well. It comes down to Machi. They have to defend this cap. There's no way they can hold inside their bunker for the entire time. Despite Nunn still picking up kills here, it's going to be Ursa eventually getting this Dragon Blade and really cleaning up Machi.
And you'll notice very smartly as well, part of what enabled that is instead of retreating at this particular moment where maybe they would have had an opportunity to, Erster kind of stuck where he was because he needed to get the healing. They had the healers in there as well. And Michelle made a point to stick close to Erster so that Kant, who was off to the side on the soldier, couldn't do anything about him. The members on the ground couldn't do anything about him. Erster was safe for long enough to get topped off, get a little bit more ult charge, and then start to reassess the game so that he could figure out who he could pick and where and when. And it was Kant that he was going to be able to get after that, right? And instantly did. From there, it was just about pulling it through to get those ultimates up. And this was just right at the very end. This was instantly converted into a double kill with a pulse bomb out of DM. From there, it was Machi just inherently behind the 8-ball. Some charge had already gone up on the point by then before that double kill. Yeah. You just can't recover from that situation, not with only a third needed to be capped.
We've seen DM do that at many junctures throughout the evening on Lee Jung, picking up multiple kills with or without the pulse bomb. So this kind of thing does happen rather often for Ardeont when they need to get a large string of kills. Talk about the fact they're a good snowball team. This is why they're able to get so much value out of each ultimate. When Ursa Dragon Blades, multiple kills come out. When DM Pulse Bombs, you're expecting kills to come out as well there. Even if it's just one, it's a big start for the team. And when Ardeont roll on through, they really steamroll you.
And if you want to as well take a bit of a comparative metric here, Machi are currently 7th, while Mega Thunder are currently 6th. And you have to be fair in saying Mega Thunder had a much closer looking game in certain places against Ardeont yesterday. Republic going to get player of the game on the Reinhardt. Not one we've seen a whole lot of. Generally, it's him on the Winston. And he's even been upfront in saying they like the Winston and favor the Winston. But got to have a bit of a spin on the Reinhardt. And I mean, between things like that massive Earth Shatter on King's Row and just general solid performances, I think that's pretty well deserved. Now we're going to get a bit of a chat with the players.
It's going to be with Republic Player of the Game.
안녕하세요. 저는 아디언트의 메인 탱크를 맡고 있는 리퍼블릭이라고 합니다.
So hello, I'm Republic, the main tank of Ardeont.
担任就是主坦的 Republic。是我们今天翻译小姐非常非常的可爱，刚看到就有一种心花怒放的感觉。那我们现在问一下我们第一题问题好了。今天在跟Machi聊天的时候，其实有聊到他认为两队队伍的打法其实有一点点相似的，他自己对起来觉得如何
How do you feel about the different play styles? I understand you had a little bit of a chat with Machi earlier, and you and your team and Machi have some similarities here. So what do you think about that?
说就是虽然说两队真的就是还蛮相似的
So we have some similarities.
就是他觉得他们的打法好像还是更快。
But I feel like we are still faster than that.
那因为Ardeont是位于我们联赛的第1名，到现在还没有输过嘛，想好
So
奇问一
Ardeont,
下队伍这
so
样
Ardeont
是怎么样
is a team that
检讨
hasn't
自己
lost
的
yet.
弱点呢？
What do you feel like, since you really haven't lost, do you feel like you have any weaknesses? And would you like to share any?
자기 팀 연습할 때 혹시 강화해야 하는 점이 무엇인지
아직 팀워크가 더 부족해갖고 팀워크 더 맞춰야 될 것 같아요.
他说他们的团队默契必须要再就是增强一下，他们默契还不太够。
So I feel like, in scrims we still don't have the best results that we can get. So to really shape up our scrim results and improve even further.
Reparty 它本身打温斯顿的话是很具有侵略性的。那想问一下，他在之前的话有担任过什么样的职位吗？就是有打过输入手或者是
Have you played any other roles aside from tank? I notice you have a very interesting tank play style.
서브 테커 유저였어요 원래.
他说他在打主坦之前，就是之前自己在玩的时候都是副坦。
So I started playing flex and I moved to main tank.
比较偏于被动，所以他变成是玩温斯顿的话，也是有相同的概念嘛。
Quite catch the question there.
서브 탱크 할 때 윈스턴 쓰는
달라요. 서브 탱크랑 메인 탱크 할 때는.
他说是在用的时候会有一点点不一样。
So there's a bit of difference between the play styles and moving through.
Runaway 这支队伍的话，在最后面是3-2是晋级
So
到
yesterday in Apex, Runaway had a 3-2 victory against GC Busan.
算他们队伍的灵魂人物啦。想问一下，说你们队伍有没有这样子一个振奋人心的人物存在？
저희 팀에서는 어스라는 멤버가 제 장난도 많이 치고 기분을 좋게 합니다.
他说就是那个队伍里面有一个叫 Erster 的人，然后就是他最会开玩笑啊，怎么样，就是让队里面的就是气氛比较就是和乐融融。
So I feel like in those teams they have someone like Ursa who's really lighthearted and keeps them around the
目
team
前他们在
really
那
good.
个这个阵整攻上面的话，算是非常的突出。然后想问一下， 他身为主坦，要怎么跟自己家的选手配合，培养自己的默契？
So how do you feel like as a main tank player? How do you synergize with the rest of your players, including the DPSs? What do you think is important there?
메인 탱커로서 격투를 벌릴 때
일단은 저희 딜러들이 먼저 상대 위치를 저한테 알려주고요. 저 그때 이제 들어가자고 준비되면 그때 바로 들어가요.
就是一开始呢，就是刺客们就是会互相就是看一下，就是大家的位置在哪里。
So
然后
the
这时候
DPSs
主坦就会说哦，开始就是
scout
那个
out
会
the
先
positioning of the enemy
就
team,
是检查对方的位置。
and then as the main
然后
tank,
一说就是
I make the
开战之后
call
就会
to make the dive to go in, and everyone plays around that.
了解了，那我们也知道这支队伍最后是怎么样的发挥，以及他们认为他们自己的沟通是还要再加强的，感觉会变成一支更可怕的队伍。那我们这边休息一
Right,
下，
so
之
that
后精彩比
is
赛
the
马上就会
post-match
来喽。
interview now with Republics. A couple of good thoughts in the team there. And look, we know Republic and Ardeont in generally have. They're obviously a very good team. They play against some other very good teams as well. So interesting, sort of how they feel about their own results outside of matches as well, and how they're moving along.
Yeah, a bit of a loaded question, isn't it? It's like, well, do you have any weaknesses? It's like, well, yes, but I'm not going to say them out loud.
Not the ones that you can exploit anyway. So
no,
I'll
exactly.
give you something that's a bit more free. So.
Yeah, but I mean, hey, it's another 3-0 for Ardeont, and that's the second round robin. We seem
Let
to-
our big side, it's another 3-0 from us.
It does seem to have been, the round robin of 3-0s, but the rest of the day we could see a little bit of a change up in that because, of course, coming up next later on today, we have Hong Kong Attitude coming up against Flash Wolves, third place versus second place, and Hong Kong Attitude eager to get their last chance to beat Flash Wolves before playoffs, and then after that, of course, Black Esports need to keep ahead in terms of wins as they come up against Mega Thunder.
Right, and with that win that Ardeont collect, we finish up the first match of the evening. 2 more matches coming up still, as already mentioned. Flash Wolves and Hong Kong Attitude will be coming back. That all happens after this break, so don't go anywhere.